All right, Beth's got it. We're good to go. Thank you, Beth.
Well,
Are we ready? The cage is open.
I'm ready.
Perfect. All right. I think I got everything right. There they are. So they'll confer. I think we're about ready to start.
Yeah, I asked Kenny if you want to, if you were going to broadcast the pulpit portion. Blankets, if anybody's cold, you can tell.
Perfect.
But they're not souvenirs.
You gotta keep them here. I think this is the largest.
Yeah,
It's nice to see.
I knew this would be nice called.
It's nice to see people actually being able to get together. So far removed from it for a long time.
Well, let's see, you got two rabbis. Family speech.
I think so. I think to some capacity. But it's
sit here and also she got dipped. Let's pull up one more chair. He's not
You're not going to sit? Are you going to sit, Dave? With that? No?
the kids and grandkids. Same food. How about this? Lower together. Thank you,
You can be seated. Welcome. Thank you for being here for this moment, this opportunity that we have to say goodbye to Richard Dick Cook. We begin actually with a ritual that we call Kriya. It's the tearing of a ribbon. And so we're going to take a moment to hand these out. You're going to pin this on your lapel. Pin it right on, don't do anything with it yet. This ritual that we begin with, this tearing, we do for a couple of reasons. The first reason that we tear is because this is hard. We're physical people. Maybe it feels good to just rip something, to just do something physical to represent the grief. We tear because this is a rip in the fabric of your family, a big one. But we also tear because it changes the status of those who mourn. And I know that there's been a lot of details, a lot of logistics, a lot of caretaking, a lot of organizing that has happened, not just in the last few days, but in the last few years. And this changes things. And especially for Brian, this changes your job. And for Craig, and for Dave, and for Dick's grandsons, this changes your job. From being people who organize and people who handle things and people who make sure that jobs are done and things are taken care of, to people who just get to mourn. And so I'll ask you to repeat these words after me, those of you that are wearing ribbons. Adonai Natan, Va'adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai Mevorach. That means God gives and God takes away. Blessed is the name of God. And now you can go ahead and tear your ribbon. You just, not a whole lot, just a tiny bit. It should already have a little. And then we say Baruch, Dayan, Ha'emet. Praised are you, Adonai our God, judge of truth. So as we begin our service today, again, I'm Rabbi Emily Hyatt. This is Rabbi Steve Foster, and we're really honored to be here with you in this moment of saying goodbye. There's really three parts of a funeral, of a Jewish funeral. The first part is us preparing ourselves to do this hard work of saying goodbye, especially to someone like Dick who took up a lot of room in our hearts and in our community. The second thing that we do is tell his story. We can't tell it until it's done. And so now we have the opportunity to look back and to tell the story of his life. And the third thing we do is the physical act of laying his body to rest in this beautiful, peaceful place with his parents, making sure that he is safe and where he's going to stay here. So those are the three things that we do. And now we prepare ourselves. We spend a minute getting ourselves ready. And I want to start by sharing with you one of my favorite pieces of our tradition, a psalm, Psalm 121. And I learned yesterday that Dick is third, fourth generation Colorado since 1876 or 1878, I think, has had Colorado roots. And this psalm, the English I'll read first, it says, "A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains." And we can't see them right now, but we know they are there. And that is such a part of being a Coloradan. "From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian and the protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and your coming now and forever." Shir lema'alot esa einai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz. Al yitein lamu raglecha al yanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha al tilcha al yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yikeka v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor et zeitecha uvolecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. And I share with you just one more reading in preparation for this work that we are going to do. It's a poem by an Israeli author named Zelda. It's based on a piece of our tradition that talks about how each of us has more than one name. We have the name that's given to us by God, the name that our parents name us, and then a name that we make for ourselves. And I know that in this community, Dick Cook had a name, and so we share these words. Each of us has a name given to us by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. And so with that, hold on one second. And with that, we move into the beginning part of telling the story of Dick's life. And I have this habit that I've picked up since I became a rabbi that I love to spend a minute when I'm in a cemetery looking at headstones. You can learn a lot from what's on somebody's gravestone. People that love them share all kinds of beautiful information on those stones. But there's one piece that we overlook that actually I think is the most important part of a stone. Because if you look, you'll see somebody's name in English or in Hebrew, and then you see the day they were born. And what we know now, especially today, is the day they die. And in between those two dates is a tiny little dash. It's the smallest, simplest symbol. It's just a tiny line. And yet the dash doesn't belong until we have a person's final day on this earth. And that dash contains the entire story of their lives. We see the day that they were born, that very first day. We see the day that they left us, that very last day, and the entirety of what they did, who they were, what they taught us exists in that tiny dash. So I want to tell you what I've learned about Dick's dash. I learned yesterday in my conversations with his family that Dick had a dash that is full of Denver. He was born in Denver, June 21st, 1932. He started his life on the west side. And in fact, they have a long Denver history, his family. His dad, Dave, was born in Denver in 1901. His great-grandfather came to Colorado in 1878 and immediately started that pawn shop business, which Grandpa Dave took over. And Dick had a plaque from Mayor McNichols, who made a proclamation in May 1978 for 100 years of business in Colorado. That's a lot of Colorado. Dick moved to the east side of Denver and graduated from East High School, went to CU Boulder, but came back to Denver when his dad passed away in 1951. And he finished college at DU while simultaneously taking over his dad's business with his brother Herb. Now, we also know that he had a dash full of business. He was a tremendous business owner and manager. Herb and Dick built the business from 1951 when they took over. There were 2 stores downtown when that happened. And when they sold the stores in 1986, there were 21 of them. Dick was incredibly well respected by all of his employees and by his friends and his family. And he was also of the generation that worked a lot. In fact, maybe even we could call him a workaholic. He would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was out the door by 4. And there were a lot of nights when he didn't come home until way past bedtime. But all that work was a pleasure for him because we know that Dick had a dash that is full of sports. He was an avid sports fanatic from the very beginning. So much so that even though he was a left-handed human, when he found out that they didn't have lefty golf clubs, he just learned to play right-handed because not playing wasn't an option. His love of sports went beyond maybe fanatic, maybe it even hovered around obsessive. But his kids lived their lives around sporting events, whether it was something to watch, football, tennis, baseball, hockey, or it was college and they were watching CU, or they weren't watching, they were participating or playing. It was all about sports. They didn't do anything or plan anything in their family until they checked the calendar. But that also meant that he had a dash that was full of community. Dick and Herb were very community oriented. They spent a lot of time figuring out how to make their community better, how to bring their love of sports to other people. Some of the things that continue on today, like ski buses that take people up to the mountains, the baseball that came to Colorado because of the efforts they made, the little leagues that started up through Police Athletic League, the Denver Post fishing tournament, where people would submit their fish and then all summer there was a contest and then they would have a fish shop at the end of the summer. It was all about building community, bringing what they loved to their community. And we know that Dick had a dash full of Jewish community too. They were really involved and really cared about building the Jewish community, from the building of Rose Hospital and investment in the Anti-Defamation League. Things that were going on in the community meant a lot to them, and they were there, they showed up, they made an effort. And what I heard yesterday from Craig and Brian is that this is the end of an era of Jewish businessmen who really, really spent a lot of time building our community. They all worked together, they all spent time together, and they all invested and built. And they saw those businessmen, they saw the value in being together, which isn't surprising because we know that this is definitely a dash full of family. We know that Dick was a brother. Herb and Dick were really close. They were best friends. They talked every day. They teased each other. They loved each other. And apparently Apparently, it was a real experience to play golf with them because they would pick at each other unmercifully. And Brendan and Harrison said when Dick died that Herbie probably had a tea time waiting for him already. We know that Dick was a son. Herb and Dick were close to their mother, Jane, and they were the most loving children until the day she died. And here we are also right next to her and their dad's graves. We know that Dick was a wonderful father. Craig and Brian remember Dick as a strict dad, one who expected a lot from them. And as they worked with him, the expectations, because they were his kids. And they say they're better for it, but it was really hard to live up to those expectations. And they were known as the boss's kids. They got no breaks. They called him Dick instead of Dad when they were working because it wasn't appropriate to say Dad in the store. But even despite that, he was a really good father. He provided. They had everything they wanted and needed, but he also made sure that they earned and worked for everything they got after they graduated. He was demanding, but fair. And even though he worked hard when he wasn't working, he was watching sports, playing sports, or at a charity event, and much of the time he was there with his kids. They were members of Green Gables, as Grandpa Dave was one of the founding members, and he loved spending time. Dick loved spending time with Craig and Brian out there. And we know that he really loved his grandsons, Brendan and Harrison. He made sure that he spent time with them and did as many things with them as he could. And even though he spent winters more recently in Arizona, where he lived on a lake and had his fishing boat, he would make sure that Brian could take the boys down so they could play golf, so they could go fishing. And he loved to show the boys around and show them off. He was really proud of them. And hopefully they'll say that they were lucky enough to enjoy getting to go to a lot of those sporting events with him and to play sports with him. And finally, we know that it is a dash full of love. People were really important to Dick. He was the kind of guy that could have met someone 15 years ago, wouldn't see them, and then would run into them and remember their name, their relevant details. And that made his Alzheimer's diagnosis even more devastating because he was a guy that remembered things to a fault. In fact, there are things that his kids maybe wished that he would forget from when they were kids, and he didn't forget. But even at the end, when he couldn't remember, people still loved him. A specific acknowledgement goes out to Elaine and Versi, two amazing women who really loved him and took wonderful care of him till the end of his life. And to Brian, who was there every day for the last few years, even though Dick didn't know who he was. Because that's what happens now. Dick's sons, his grandsons, his community, those who knew him, those who learned from him and loved him, we do the remembering for him. As we look back on that tiny little dash, we know that it is rich and beautiful. That's the thing about a dash. It's so small. We can take it with us. We carry it with us when we leave here, and we take it wherever we go. The dash, as full as it is, doesn't take up so much space. And so today, as we prepare to bury a man who was big in life, we're comforted, knowing that we have his stories, his legacy, his lessons, and his love to take with us as we say goodbye. Rabbi Foster.
Elohim Elohim, our God and God of all generations. Thou who governest all things with infinite wisdom and mercy, and who guidest the destinies of all of humankind. As a parent, have you loved us and showered your blessings upon us. Therefore, we shall not murmur even when sorrow befalls us. But with humility and unfaltering trust, we shall accept your decrees. In joy and in sorrow alike, we praise your goodness and acknowledge your justice. Remember that we are but strangers upon earth. Like a shadow, our life flees away. Help us, O God, so to walk in your sight, that when the few years of our earthly pilgrimage are ended, we may be ready to meet our end with tranquil mind. In thee we look for comfort and strength when one of our beloved is taken from us, and a link is broken in the chain of love which binds us together. Though we walk in the valley of the shadow of death, we shall fear no evil, for you are with us. Be praised, O eternal our God, in all your dispensations, and sanctified be your name, now and forevermore. Just a second or so ago, we just referred to the walking through the valley of the shadow of death in the 23rd Psalm. There are no words that are used more often in moments like this than the words of the 23rd Psalm because it mentions death. I learned a long time ago from one of my professors that when King David, who is the author of this particular psalm, when he wrote it, his concern was not about walking through the valley of the shadow of death, but he didn't want people to get stuck in it. He wanted to make sure they did walk through it. And so I'm going to read it in Hebrew in a moment, and then we can read it all together in English. But the truth is that this moment is about making sure that we walk through that valley and not get stuck in the middle of it. All too often people do get stuck in that valley of the shadow of death. So I'm going to read it in Hebrew, and then I hope that you will join with me for those of you who know it or those who just know a word or two of it. Adonai roi lo echsor benotesha yarbitseni al mei menuchotin aleini. Nafshi shovev yancheni b'magleit tzedek l'man shemo. Gam ki elech begeit samavet lo ira rak yata imadi. Shivcha mishantecha hema yinachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sororai. Shanta v'shemen roshiko suravaya. Ach tov v'chesed. Yirdefuni kol yamei chayai. Shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yami. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Beloved family, dear friends, obviously we gather here at this very sad time, recognizing that we are small in numbers, but we wouldn't be were it not for this tragic year. Many, many people would be here to say their final farewells to Dick. Even if he wouldn't have known that, they would have known that, because he had a profound effect upon the lives of our community. I hope you will permit me just a few moments to add to the very beautiful words that Rabbi Hyatt has already shared about that dash that he lived. And it was a big dash, not a small dash. It's an important dash, obviously, for all of the things that she has already said, but because our community is a better place because of his presence. But it is always hard to come to this time and to this place. Never easy. Even when one lives 88 years. Could have been longer. We would have loved it longer, but not so short either. 88 years, a good life. But this life is, this moment is really one of bittersweetness, as we have said so very often over the years. In this case, it is especially bitter because he did not quite understand what was happening. And yet it is sweet Because whether it was physical or emotional, and there was some of both, that has finally come to an end. And he can rest in peace. Whatever that means, and it may mean something different to each of us. None of us really understands what's going to happen to us when we're gone. We really don't. We might like to think we know, and that's good, that's faith. Faith for any one of us, whatever it is that we believe. And so if there are 40 of us here, there are 40 different concepts about what will happen to us. And I hope for his sake that Herbie is there with a tea time. But I do want to say one thing about that tea time. I golfed with them both. Trust me. And I don't care whether Dick was left-handed or right-handed. He wasn't a very good golfer. He loved it. And maybe he wasn't really good because he was hitting right-handed and he was a lefty. But the truth is, we don't know what's going to happen. People ask me all the time, Rabbi, what's going to happen when I die? I said, I have two answers. Number one, I really don't know. I've never been there. And secondly, I am not anxious to find out. And Dick wasn't anxious to find out either. And that's the truth about this moment. It's always hard to say goodbye. There is that sweetness to this time. Sometimes death does come as a friend to those who've suffered. And it's a friend that says, okay, time is gone. And that's okay. This is an emotional time for family. And we recognize that Alzheimer's so often robs patients of their understanding, especially of the recent times in their lives. They can't understand it. They can't believe it. They don't know why things are happening to them. This is also a difficult time for family, because families can only watch with sadness as their loved ones lose hold upon the grasp of life. And it's hard. Now that his death has come, perhaps this poem, perhaps it's helpful. The poet wrote, "To the living death is a wound. Its name is grief. Its companion is loneliness. Whenever it comes, whatever its guise, even when there are no tears, death is a wound. But death belongs to life as night belongs to day, as darkness belongs to light, as shadow belongs to substance, as the fallen leaf belongs to the tree from which it came. Death belongs to life. It is not our purpose to live forever. It is only our purpose to live. It is of no added merit that a man lives long, but it is of merit that his life was good." And in so many ways, Dick's life was good. So many ways. Oh, are there parts of his life that he would have said weren't good? Of course. For every one of us, there are those moments. For every one of us, there are regrets. For every one of us, there are also moments in which grab life. I believe we rob death of its ultimate victory by living life as long as it is ours to live. If in your grief as family you see something that Dick did and you thought it was a good thing that he did, then do it yourselves, because that's how we give strength. That's how we give comfort to those who are gone. This is a time to mourn, as we all recognize, because you as family have lost someone who was very special in life. It is a time for tears, because tears are the tender tribute of love and respect that we the living pay to the dead. It is a time to remember. this isn't the time, then when is the time to remember who he was as he wanted to live in his highest moments of living? Because that is what we are as human beings. This is a time to question the mysteries of life and of death, and what will happen to each of us as we enter into this mystery. But it's a time for us to reflect on the giving of life, to reflect on what it was that Dick tried to do in his life, how he wanted to make a difference. So his history has been shared with us, and we all know that history. Some better than others, but his history has been a part of our lives as well. There are two sides to each of us, though, and no less so for Dick. I often like to talk about the fact that Dick, in so many ways, was like a sabra. Why are sabras named sabras? The word sabra is a cactus. Why a cactus? Because if you look at the cactus, it's bristly on the outside, and when you cut into it, it's very sweet. So many of us are the same way, and Dick was no different. There were parts of him that were bristly on the outside, but there were so many parts that were sweet and tender and loving on the inside. That memory loss of his that we reflect upon is not what we should remember about him. We should remember the memory that he had and the way in which he could understand people and who they were and what they were. We should remember how he and Herbie built that business, a big business, not a small little place. They built it. They built upon the past, just as each of them wanted their children and grandchildren to build on their works for the future. That's a part of what his life was about. And it was an important part of his life. It wasn't just that they built a business, they built a successful business. Thousands and thousands of people knew of Dave Cook's sporting goods. I even said to somebody today who, not Jewish, they're young people. I even said to him, I said, I have this funeral this afternoon. He said, who was it? I told him. I said, you ever heard of Dave Cook? Oh, yes, of course I heard of Dave Cook. I said, well, that's whose family it was. So it's important that we recognize that it wasn't just building a business, it was building success. And with that success came that sense of responsibility to give back to the community. And they did that. As Rabbi Hyatt has so beautifully shared, they did it in so many ways because that was what they thought was their responsibility. And whether it was the baseball teams or the fishing or the football, it doesn't matter. His life was those sports. And so whether he did it himself, fishing and tennis and golf, or whether he watched other people do it and took other people to those places or helped other people develop those skills themselves, that was what was important to him. He was involved in life, not just sports. He was involved in life. And it was the lives of those people who played those sports or did those sports that he helped in so many ways. And yes, he devoted time to ADL and cancer research and federation and all of those things because he was a generous guy. Very generous. Oh, I know sometimes he'd give us a hard time. I went to him very often. And at first he would say, what do you want? You want something? I said, yeah, here's what I want. And he'd start out by saying, I don't, and then he'd say, of course. Because that's just who he was. He was a person of integrity. He was a person of honesty. He said what he thought. And even if you didn't like what he said, the truth is, look at the paper or look at Look at the obit. Look at the obit from Feldman's, and you'll see that smile on his face. That's what you'll remember. You remember that little smile, that smile that says, I got you. Because that's who he was. And he tried to do it that way. He had a love for his family. He had a love for her, but he had a love for his mother, his father. And he wanted his legacy to be carried on. And I believe that that's the best thing that you as a family can do at this time. Listen to the words that Craig has shared. He says, it's hard to find words to say what I and our family are feeling. In many ways, we don't really have to say a thing as we are surrounded by our friends. And now the sun's coming out on the prairie. And other families that know exactly what we're feeling. We have talked to many of you, and we tell you that while his passing was actually a blessing because his quality of life was failing. It is still nonetheless a loss. A loss that every time we think about it, we get a lump in our throat and a tear in our eye. And we take a deep breath trying to be strong, even though we feel that hole in our heart and the ache in our own souls. I know that it will just take time, and we will learn to live with it. We will try to remember or hear a story or something he did, and it will help. More than anything else, I feel blessed this day with everyone here, both physically and in spirit, whether online, video, or just the warm thoughts. And I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Rabbi Foster, to Rabbi Hyatt. Thank you to my wife, who is the love of my life. Thank you to my nephews, who've been incredible in their love for their grandfather and never hesitated for a moment to do anything they could for Dick these past few years as he deteriorated in life. It's truly amazing to watch, and I'm so proud of him. Well, there are many others, the one I need to say something about, and the biggest thank you is to my brother Brian. There are no words that can adequately describe how caring, how dedicated, how devoted, how unselfishly he has been to our dad. He's put his life on hold to be there for him. He's turned the other cheek when Dick would yell at him, albeit for nothing, or continue to answer the cell phone when it was Dick calling literally for the 20th time in the last half hour, because Dick did not remember he had called before. He sat with Dick at meal after meal, gently pushing to try to get Dick to eat, promising ice cream, which Dick loved if he would just eat a few more bites. He schlepped him to countless doctors' rehab centers, sat with him at hospital after hospital, especially these last 3 months when Dick kept falling and hurting himself. He would drop everything he was doing to be there for Dick. He did it not because Dick understood or appreciated it. He did it because that was who he is. So it is with all my love and heartfelt appreciation that I want to say thank you to my brother Brian for all you have done, for just being you. I know that our Father is proud of him and loves him more than he could ever know because of it. Finally, I want to say thank you to Elaine Grant Johnson and to Versi, who were Dick's caregivers. Elaine especially spent long, very long days taking care of Dick, sometimes sacrificing time with her own family to make sure that Dick's needs were attended to. She would answer his phone call at her house, even though she may have just left Dick an hour before or on her day off. She was able to get Dick to do things that no one else could. In fact, I remember thinking that I wished I had had her gift with him when I was growing up. Versi would come on a moment's notice to do anything for Dick. We both are incredible people and have become family to us. Thank you for all you did to make Dick's life a little bit better. Our dad was never easy. He had a heart of gold. He loved his family and community, and we will miss him. Thank you again to all for your thoughts and your wishes. Love, Brian. You didn't put that in there, but I say that because these words are written out of love. And so, dear friends, we can only hope and pray that God will comfort this family in this time of their sorrow. That they will find the strength, compassion, the understanding, not to get caught in that valley, but to walk through it, to be proud of who Dick was in his life. It is in that spirit then that we resolve to face our grief without self-pity, but with bravery and integrity, keeping before us forever the blessings that God conferred upon us in this life that he but lent to us for these many decades. And in a world where our most precious goods are perishable, let us resolve to honor our beloved dead by being so good to the living, so kindly, so understanding, so forgiving, so transcendent of pettiness. And in our love for him, we shall hearken to those who remain and who need us in our strength. May it be through new relationships and new service to humanity that we make good our loss. And in the beauty of our own lives, erect the noblest monument to our mourn dead. And thus the beauty of his life shall ever abide among us all as a living and loving benediction. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach me'atav yad olam. God has given. God has taken away. Praise be the name of God, now and forever. And let us all say together, Amen. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the blueness of the sky and in the heat of the summer, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we will remember him. When we have achievements based on his, we will remember him. So long as we live, he too shall live. For he now is a part of us, and we will remember him. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem b'tzalmo v'tznan chilkel etchem b'tovo. V'himit etchem b'din v'natah b'tokechem chai olam. Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet. We praise you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in your goodness, causing all of us to die and planting immortal life within us. We praise you, O God, the judge of truth. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai Rav Hoshea, mechalkel chaim b'chesed, v'chayei hakol b'rachamim rabim, somech naflim v'rofei cholim, v'matir asurim. Eternal is your might, O God, all life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love you sustain the living, with great compassion you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. We praise you, O God, who implants eternal life within us.
We arrive now at the hardest part, saying goodbye. It's a physical experience that we're about to have because it hurts to say goodbye and because we have this amazing, beautiful tradition of participating. This is about to be one of the greatest things that we can do for another person. In a moment, I am going to invite up Brian and Sharon and Craig and Debbie and Dave and Brendan and Harrison first to help to fill this grave with earth. What a hard thing to do, to physically participate in burying your loved one. And yet, just like we just heard, Brian there all the time with Dick when he needed that love and that care. It's what we do today. We show up even when our loved one doesn't know, and even when they can't say thank you. I want to share 2 traditions that we have about this custom with you before we begin. The first is that after the family, the immediate family, places some earth into the grave, you're all invited as well to place a little bit of earth into the grave. It's something we do as a community. We first take the shovel, and our first shovelful, we use the back of the shovel. It's really hard to shovel with the back of a shovel. It doesn't work very well because this is really hard. We're not pretending like this is easy, and we should represent that. The second tradition that we have is that we don't hand the shovel to the next person. Each of us has our own grief, our own feeling, our own experience, and so we place the shovel back into the earth for the next person to take independently so that we can each be in our grief as we need to be. If you are feeling like you don't want to touch a shovel today, which is completely understandable, I invite you, if you want to participate, to just take a little bit of earth in your hand and to use that to help us with this beautiful tradition. And so with that, I call up first our immediate family, Brian and Sharon, and then Craig and Debbie, and Dave, and the boys. Invite anybody else that wants to participate to form a line.
Challenge. Oh.
Make sure the cast is covered before you can do it. Generally.
We're going to continue our service in just a moment. It's our tradition that we don't say our memorial prayers until the casket is covered by earth, and then we'll finish filling the grave after we're done. But I invite you back to your places, and I invite you to remain standing for our memorial prayers. And now that we have done this work of laying Dick to rest and making sure that he is safe, that he is at peace here in so many ways, We say together the words of our memorial prayer. First the El Male Rachamim, and then we conclude with the Mourners Kaddish, which is in your hands. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar, Harak Yamaz Hirim. At Nishmat Yitzchak Lev ben David Ber Uzlata, Shehalach Leolamo, Val Harachamim Yasirehu, Beseter Knafav Leolamim, Beyitzror Bitzor Achayim at Nishmato, Adonai Hunachalato, Beyanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo. Menomar. Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace. Together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven, compassionate God, hold Yitzchak Lev ben David Be'er Vizlata close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. The final prayer that we recite in this moment is our Mourners Kaddish. It is words that Dick's family is going to become very familiar with over the next year. We recite these words a lot when we are mourning the loss of a loved one. They don't mention death. They talk about the beauty of life. And so I hope that what you take from this moment, what you take from Dick's legacy and his life, is an appreciation for the time that you had and a love for the experience and the legacy that he leaves us. We join together now in the words of the Mourners Kaddish. Yitgadol v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'amad yivrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayei v'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru ameh. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'le'omei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushvachata v'nechamata da'amiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imroma hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace on high make peace for us and for all of Israel. And we say together, Amen. Adonai. Go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, and may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. And we say to our mourners as we conclude our service today, Hamakom yinachem etchem b'toch sha'ar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion and